Дали ще намери фото на машините за генерал Breedlove? Уважаеми госпожи и господа министри, депутати, ваши превъзходителства, господа адмирали, генерали и офицери, господин върховен главнокомандващ на въоръжените сили на НАТО в Европа и главнокомандващ на въоръжените сили на Съединените щати в Европа. Изключително радостен съм, че имам възможност в името на Дипломатическия институт с силната подкрепа на Министерството на отбраната и лично на началото на отбраната да приветствам един от най-опитните военни, които прекрачват границите на България. Генерал Breedlove има забележителна биография. Той взема сегашната си длъжност на върховен командващ на съюзното командване на операциите от пролетта на 2011 година. Преди да назначен на тази длъжност, генерал Breedlove е служил като два пъти командир на изтребителна ескадрила и крило в Южна Корея, командващ ВВС на САЩ в Европа, ВВС на САЩ в Африка, командващ на военно-логистичното компетентно командване в Рамштайн, директор на Единния център за компетентност на ВВС в България и Германия, отварящ дейности на ВВС, провеждани на зонна операция, покриваща повече от 19 милиона квадратни мили. Не знам какво ще значи това километра, много повече. Отговаряли за 105 страни в Европа, Африка, Азия, Близкия изток, както и Атлантически и Северен океан. Генерал Breedlove е израснал в Фойс Парк, Джорджия, и е произведен в първо офицерско звание през 1977 година, като завърши техническата програма на корпусното обучение на резервисти в Джорджия. Служил е на много оперативни командни щатни длъжности и участвал в над 10 мисии за граница. Командвал е изтребителна ескадрила, оперативна група, 3 изтребителни бази и самостоятелно ВВС формирование. Генерал Breedlove е летял на военни мисии в операцията Joint Guardian. Той е командир пилот с повече от 3500 летателни часа, основно на F-16. Аз имам само това, което трябва да навакса. След това е служил като офицер по операцията в океанското командване, старши военен съветник на секретаря на ВВС, заместник директор на стратегическо планиране и политика, заместник началник на операция с планиране на главната квартира на ВВС САЩ, заместник национален щаб на ВВС САЩ, бакалавър с инженерен специалност в Института по технология в Джорджия, магистър по космически технологии, магистър по национална сигурност от Национален военен колеж, отлично от училището за офицери и ескадрили и колежа на въздушното командване. За съжаление, той е само за 35 минути, така че не мога да продължа с неговата биография, защото ще изчерпвам цялото време. Само да кажа накрая, че е носител на множество награди и 4 пъти на медала Легион за заслуга, която се съждат за изключително много за поведение и изпълнение на служба за високи постижения. Това, което знаеше през веднага ще вземе за вътрешното заглавие, генерал Breedlove е запален мотоциклетически лев, поддръжник на безопасността на движението с мотоциклет. С тези няколко думи искам да ви помоля всички вас, с изменението за тези, които са правостоящи, но интересът към днешната лекция искам да помоля всички вас, и следваме правостоящи да приветстваме нашия гост със сърдечно добре дошъл.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Sometimes when I hear the introduction, I'm looking around to see who he's talking about. It's a fantastic opportunity that I have today to speak to such an illustrious gathering, many influential people and a lot of critical thinkers. The timing for our discussion today is just perfect. following closely after the NATO summit and the Chiefs of Defense Conference in Lithuania. It's a particular pleasure to be in Bulgaria, a great nation with a rich history, a strong ally and a close friend that contributes considerably to our shared security. And today I thank the Chief of Defense for the magnificent performance of his soldiers, sailors, airmen downrange as they serve with us. After my first 18 months as the SAC here, it's clear to me that we are entering into a period of significant strategic and operational change. A period shaped by the end of our ISAP operation and by a rapidly changing and increasingly challenging security environment. The Washington Treaty that created NATO in 1949 was driven by a strong common interest. World War II was over and a new common threat had emerged, which united our efforts on both sides of the Atlantic and forged this great common alliance. At the end of the Cold War, the 1990s were a period of great challenge as well. Adaptation and opportunity abounded. This was matched by a robust period of NATO military development that led to initiatives such as the Combined Joint Task Force concept, Partnership for Peace, and the initial moves towards crisis management and what we would soon call out-of-area operations. Today, we are facing a new and in many ways more complex strategic and operational challenge, and we face it together. NATO's new period of adaptation will require innovation, robust ideas, and creative redesign of our alliance. And above all, it will require the same firm commitment to shared ideals and values that NATO has proclaimed since its very inception. Today, one clear set of new challenges is emanating from the East. Russia's actions represent a clear decision by Moscow to reject the fundamental principles that have shaped international security for over 25 years. The foundation for a Europe that is whole, free, and at peace. There's no question anymore about Russia's direct military involvement in Ukraine. The Russian military has used force to help tear Crimea from the rest of Ukraine. And through its forces and its proxies, the Russian military is staking claim to parts of eastern Ukraine, including Donetsk and Luhansk. As it carries out these actions, Russia has consistently sought to disguise its actions. NATO allies have a strong role to play in bringing into the light the facts and refuting Russia's false narrative. And we need to continue to hold Russia accountable before the international community for any further such actions in Ukraine or in other places in this region. A clear Russian military model is emerging. Based on observations by NATO, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and others. That model combines an array of conventional and unconventional approaches, leveraging political and economic as well as military needs. And it is a model that Russia has used in various combinations in a number of different neighboring states, to include Georgia, over the past few years. These Russian actions are simply unacceptable. In response to them, NATO has adopted a series of immediate assurance measures. They include increased engagement by our special operations forces and conventional forces across the land, maritime, and air domains. For example, NATO has increased its air policing and its AWACS deployments. But more fundamentally, the crisis in Ukraine has highlighted that NATO's current readiness does not necessarily translate into responsiveness. So based on the Wales Summit, NATO is embarking on a series of adaptation measures designed to make sure that NATO can respond appropriately and at speed to future challenges. These challenges could take many direct forms. Already, the activity in Iraq and Syria by the organization calling itself the Islamic State ISIS or ISIL, threatens the security not only of those two states, but of the Middle East as a whole. And NATO is potentially vulnerable to a whole array of challenges here on our southern line, from the demographic pressure of population migration to potential foreign fighter flows. In addition, NATO has a wide array of important ongoing commitments, including our Patriot commitments and deployments in Turkey, ongoing operations in Afghanistan and Kosovo, and cybersecurity, which is becoming an increased effort. NATO must be able to conduct multiple operations and other efforts simultaneously while preparing to meet more future challenges. One key facet of the adaptation in the Wales decisions is to create a very high readiness joint task force, or VJTF. The VJTF will be a part of the NATO response force. It will be capable of responding at speed to a full array of challenges, from potential Russian aggression to security challenges along NATO's southern line. As agreed by heads of state, the VJTF will be just one of the facets of our adaptation, which will also include a wide array of other approaches and other tools. Key to improving NATO's responsiveness will be the establishment of command and control elements forward. Alliance nations within our alliance nations to facilitate reception, staging, and timely employment of our following forces. As we look ahead, no one appreciates better than warfighters that security measures alone are only one part of making sure that we can all enjoy stability and prosperity. NATO will continue to work with a wide array of counterparts to ensure that our diplomatic, informational, military, and economic efforts are all synchronized. We communicate with every action we take, as well as with every word we say. NATO has tremendous opportunities ahead to refine the ways we use strategic communication to assure allies, demonstrate strength, and deter potential adversaries. If NATO is to deal effectively with all emerging threats to the alliance, then all of our NATO adaptation efforts must be affordable and sustainable. A strong defense begins first at home, and that means commitment and investment for each of us. And a strong defense requires a robust, steadfast alliance, committed, as we have been since our very beginning, to our shared values and our common defense. Thank you for your attention. This was a bit long, but now we get to do the fun part. I am ready for your questions, and hopefully I will have the answer.
Thank you very much, General. I was very pleased to see that you underlined that NATO has transformed readiness into responsiveness. You underlined ISIS, cybersecurity, JF, and something that I will have to communicate in many of my conversations in front of me. Strong defense starts at home. This is absolutely critical. The strong defense starts at home. Искам да благодаря за днешното събитие на подкрепата на Аркуса, на отдел за защита на Мегатрон, Джонгия, така ще кажем, и всичко. Тук ще видите много млади хора. Те са различни университети на България, от военна академия, от академията, от политически институти, студенти, студенти на професионалисти, много млади хора, които изключително ме радва. Виждам, че темата за сигурността вълнува младите хора. Разбира се, тук сред нас искам специално да присъствието на трима министри на отбрана, на двама министри на външните работи, един европейски министр и самия директор на Българската телеграфна агенция, първият президент легендата на политическата журналистика Максим Минчев. С тези няколко думи откриваме подиума за въпроси и отговори. Моля, заповядайте. Да, Айна беше първи, той се заяви. А след това имаме и няколко журналисти, които ще ви помоля да се наведат в линия, първи са се обучили БНТ, БТА, Reuters, да ще подредят в една линия. Заповядайте.
General Breedlove, you mentioned Georgia, so I'm going to ask you two short questions. First, what would be the Bulgarian contribution in the implementation of the supplemental package for Georgia accepted at the Wales summit? And the second, what could be your advice as a military towards the civilian authorities of NATO? Is it time to invite Georgia to officially become a member of NATO? Thank you.
Since the ambassador of Ukraine is here next to the ambassador of the United States, I'm sure that he also will be very interested to listen to the answers of the general.
So, first, to your question of what would Bulgaria's contribution to the supplemental package be, that has not been determined. We are working through right now what NATO's response to the supplemental package will be. And then inside of NATO's response, individual nations will make offers to meet the requirements. So this is something that NATO is still determining how the supplemental package works out. I was just recently in Georgia, as you know, to discuss this, and we are putting together our framework. And then we will identify to the nations through the military commitment, through the military committee, the requirements that then nations can participate in. So that will be largely a conversation at that time between the Chief of Defense and your government and NATO. As far as Georgia as a member, this is completely a political decision. I have said more than once that in a military framework, Georgia has met all the requirements that we ask of a nation to be a member of NATO. They have contributed far beyond their means to the missions that NATO has. As I said before, this nation has done a magnificent job of committing forces to NATO activities, and Georgia has as well. So what I would do is say that the decision to bring Georgia into the alliance is a political decision that will be reached by the NAC. But as to the military requirements, I am prepared to speak to them, and they have met and exceeded all military requirements to be a member of the alliance.
Thank you very much, General. Everybody is encouraged to tweet whatever is being said here. You can use the hashtag NATO and the hashtag Breedlove. In my list of journalists who asked for the question, first is Bulgarian National Television. Колко българската телевизия репортер след това не виждам. Минаваме тогава към следващия въпрос на Българската телеграфна агенция Асен Бойчиев репортер. Тук не. Задайте, имате думата.
Генерал, въпросът към генерал Breedlove. Какви са уроците от новите предизвикателства пред сигурността на страните членки на НАТО по отношение на разходите за отбрана?
So it's an excellent question, and this was central to our conversations at Wales. As you heard me make in my remarks, strong defense and strong alliance begins at home. Nations need to be committed to those investments that make their militaries compatible with NATO and capable with NATO and trained. We use a term which I'll explain called tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs. It's important that we not only invest in our militaries, but we train together so that we share this ability to work together through our tactics, techniques, and procedures. So at Wales, what we saw was a strong commitment of the nations to stop the decrease in investment in the militaries and to begin a program to increase their investments to try to reach the 2% goal. At Wales, it was 4 or 5, I've forgotten the number, but 4 or 5 nations at Wales made an immediate commitment to increase their spending to 2%. But all of the nations in their statement agreed that this should be the goal as our economies recover. And so it is important that all our nations remember that investment in the military is an important part of remaining compatible with and a part of our alliance so that they can be contributing members to the alliance.
Thank you, General. Reuters, Bulgaria, on air, Bulgarian National Radio. Who can listen?
General, it's Sofia with Reuters. There were reports last week that there is a column of Russian tanks entering Ukraine. Can you give us your latest update on this? Do you have such information? And also, do you believe that the rebels or Russians are actually trying to relaunch a full-scale war in Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Across the last 2 days, we have seen the same thing that OSCE is reporting. We have seen columns of Russian equipment, primarily Russian tanks, Russian artillery, Russian air defense systems, and Russian combat troops entering into Ukraine. We do not have a good picture at this time of how many. We agree that there are multiple columns that we have seen. We agree with the OSCE reports. And as to their intent, I'm not sure. My strategic team believes that there is a possibility that, as you know, this pocket of separatist Russian-backed forces and Russian forces in the east of Ukraine, it's not a very contiguous pocket. There are lines of communications that are interrupted. There are airports that are not held by the Russian-backed forces, etc. And so it is our first guess that these forces will go in to make this a more contiguous, a more whole and capable pocket of land in order to then hold on to it long term. What worries me the most, I have said before, is that we have a situation now where the former international border, the current international border of Ukraine and Russia is completely porous, it is completely wide open. Forces, money, support, supplies, weapons are flowing back and forth across this border completely at will. And that is not a good situation. We need to get back to a situation where this international border is respected. And that will help us to contain the problem of resupply into eastern Ukraine.
Благодаря. Дали някои от нашите най-млади участници днес са тук, студенти от Европа, от Софийския университет, от Военната академия, или Дипломатическия институт, дори искам да вземе думата да попита нещо, или в университета са ви казали всичко. Заповядайте на последния ред, продължаваме с журналистите. Не знам БНТ ще се ограничи или България.
Българска национална телевизия. Каква посока виждате развитието на сътрудничеството между България и НАТО с оглед на новите заплахи за сигурността в Черноморския регион и изобщо в източна Европа? И ако позволите още един въпрос, как виждате развитието на отношенията между НАТО и Украйна в близко и по-далечно бъдеще? Благодаря ви.
Благодаря на БНТ, както за мнение.
Okay, so I had 2 questions there. I'm going to read them back to make sure that I have them correct. Looking at the current situation, you asked me what is the future of cooperation between NATO and Bulgaria, and I'm ready to answer that. And then the second, you asked me a more specific question about what is the future of cooperation between NATO and Ukraine. Do I have that correct? That's good. Okay, so first of all, Bulgaria is an incredible, capable, and vibrant partner of NATO. So our cooperation in the future is completely cemented by that relationship. We look forward to cooperating with Bulgaria as it works toward modernizing its forces and remaining capable and interoperable with NATO forces. And so we look forward to that. As a part of the RAP that was agreed to at the NATO summit, we will be working with your Chief of Defense and his staff to put forward options for what we are calling a forward command and control and presence here in Romania. And that work is to be done. The design for this capability is being finalized in Brussels as we are here today. That work is being done. So as a part of our RAP procedures, we will begin to work on how we establish this presence. We will work on how we do air policing and air defense alongside the air forces of Bulgaria. And we will look at how Bulgarian forces can be folded into our VJTF or maybe folded into cooperation with our multinational Forward Northeast in the future. So again, Bulgaria and its forces are an important and vital part of our alliance, and so cooperation is what we do. As to NATO and Ukraine, we do have, NATO does have a relationship with Ukraine. NATO is now working with Ukraine to help them understand and work on their connection between their military ministries and their military and developing long-range plans for the capabilities inside of Ukraine. And NATO as an alliance has several tasks that it's doing working on those issues. Inside of NATO, multiple NATO nations in bilateral relationships with Ukraine are doing